The waiter set my drink down, leaned close, and slipped me a small, folded note. His expression didn't change, but his voice was low and firm. "Read this." Quietly. I opened it under the table, my hands already shaking. The note said, "Leave now. Your date drugged your drink." For a moment, I couldn't move. The restaurant noise faded away, and all I could hear was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. My date smiled at me across the table, completely unaware that my whole world had just turned upside down. I tried to steady my breathing, pretending everything was fine, but inside I was frozen with fear. When I looked up again, the waiter was at the far side of the room, his eyes meeting mine. He mouthed 2 words, "Back exit." My hand slipped off the glass, and I realized I had a choice: trust him and walk away, or take one sip and risk never walking away again. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure to subscribe to my channel and comment where you're watching from. You won't believe how this night ended. My name is Lena Marlowe, and I had just moved to Chicago a few months earlier. I was trying to start over after a long, difficult breakup that left me questioning everything, especially trust. My sister Brooke was the one who convinced me to give dating another try. She said, "You deserve someone nice, Lena. Not everyone's the same." So, after weeks of hesitation, I downloaded a dating app. That's where I met Ethan Cole. He was charming, polite, and easy to talk to. He worked in real estate, had an easy smile, and always said the right things. After 2 weeks of chatting, he asked if I wanted to meet for dinner. Part of me was nervous, but part of me wanted to believe this could be a fresh start. The restaurant he chose was beautiful, small, softly lit, with warm colors and the faint smell of roasted garlic in the air. It felt safe and welcoming, the kind of place where nothing bad could happen. I arrived 10 minutes early, my heart beating fast but steady. I texted Brooke, "I'm here. Wish me luck." She sent back a heart emoji and a reminder, "Don't leave your drink unattended." When Ethan walked in, he looked just like his pictures, well-dressed, confident, and smiling. He greeted me with a hug that lasted a little too long, but I brushed it off, telling myself I was just being nervous. "You look even better in person," he said, and I smiled awkwardly. We sat near the window. He was smooth and funny, asking about my job, my favorite books, my hobbies. For the first time in a while, I felt seen. When the waiter came, Ethan ordered wine for both of us before I could even look at the menu. "Oh, I don't really drink much," I said politely. "Come on," he grinned. "Just 1 glass. It's a special night." I didn't want to make things awkward, so I agreed. The waiter, his name tag read Noah, hesitated for a second, then nodded and left. Something about his eyes caught my attention. They weren't unfriendly, but there was a sharpness in the way he glanced between us. Dinner went on, and the conversation was easy. Ethan was funny, attentive, maybe a little too charming. He reached across the table, brushing my hand lightly when he talked, and every time I looked away, I noticed his eyes drift back to my drink. "You should try it," he said, smiling. "It's really good." I laughed nervously. "Not yet. Maybe after I eat something." He nodded, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. When Noah returned to refill our water, his eyes met mine again for just a second longer than normal. I thought it was strange, but I didn't think much of it. The restaurant buzzed with quiet conversation, the soft sound of plates and silverware. Everything felt so normal until it didn't. A few minutes later, Noah came back with a tray and leaned slightly closer as he set my drink down. "Here you go, miss," he said, and for the briefest moment, he slid something folded beneath the edge of my napkin. I didn't notice right away, not until Ethan turned to check his phone and Noah was already walking away. Curiosity got the better of me. I unfolded the napkin under the table, and there it was, a piece of paper, small enough to hide in my palm. My heart dropped the second I read it. "Leave now. Your date drugged your drink." My stomach turned to ice. I stared at the words, my mind spinning. I looked up at Ethan, who was smiling again, completely calm, completely normal. Every instinct in me screamed to move, to run, but I forced a smile and pretended to listen as he talked about his latest work project. I felt trapped, I couldn't panic, couldn't let him see that I knew. My fingers shook under the table as I folded the note back up. When I looked toward the waiter, Noah met my eyes again. This time, he mouthed the words I'll never forget. Back exit. Now. My whole body went cold. I had to decide right there what to do. Stay and risk everything, or trust a stranger who might have just saved my life. Would you have left if it were you? Tell me in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for the rest of this story. You'll want to hear how it ends. My heart pounded so hard I could barely hear the sounds around me. The soft music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, all of it faded into the background as I stared at the note in my shaking hands. Leave now. Your date drugged your drink. The words didn't even feel real. For a moment, I thought it had to be a misunderstanding or some cruel prank. But the waiter's eyes weren't lying. When I glanced toward him, he was standing by the bar, pretending to take an order, but his expression was tense. He looked at me again and gave the smallest nod, as if confirming it was true. Ethan leaned back in his chair, smiling easily. "So," he said, swirling his own drink, "what do you do for fun outside of work?" His voice sounded normal, calm, and that made it worse. How could someone look so casual while planning something so horrifying? I forced a smile, trying to keep my voice steady. "I like hiking, reading, spending time with my sister." Every word came out flat, robotic. I could feel my hands trembling beneath the table. I kept glancing at the glass sitting in front of me, the same one he had insisted I try. The liquid looked harmless, golden and clear. But now, it might as well have been poison. Ethan noticed my hesitation. "You still haven't tried it," he said with a teasing grin. "Come on, one sip won't hurt." I laughed lightly, hiding my fear. "I'm pacing myself," I replied, pushing the glass slightly away from me. My throat felt dry, but my mind was racing. I needed to think, fast. If I stood up suddenly or looked scared, he'd know something was wrong. I couldn't just grab my purse and run. What if he followed me? What if the note was wrong? The waiter, Noah, appeared again a minute later, refilling Ethan's glass of water. As he reached across the table, he whispered so softly, I almost didn't catch it. Back exit, kitchen hallway. He didn't look at me again. He just walked away, calm and professional, as if nothing had happened. I stared at the table, pretending to adjust my napkin. My hands were slick with sweat. My legs felt numb. I kept hearing Brooke's voice in my head, her warning from earlier that night. Don't leave your drink unattended. If I had taken even one sip, I might already be unconscious. Ethan's eyes were on me again, studying my face. "You okay? You look pale." I forced a small laugh. "I'm fine. Maybe just tired." He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Maybe you need something to loosen you up. I promise. It'll help you relax." Every hair on the back of my neck stood up. His tone wasn't playful anymore. It was controlling, sharp. He was waiting for me to trust him, to make the wrong move. "I think I'll pass," I said, glancing toward the bar again. Noah wasn't there anymore. For a second, panic rose in my chest. What if he'd left? What if I was alone in this? I picked up my phone under the table and sent a quick text to my sister. "Something's wrong. I'm at Caprice Bistro. Call me in 5. My fingers shook so much that I had to type it twice. I slid my phone back into my bag and forced myself to look at Ethan again. He smiled, but there was something colder in his eyes now. "You don't seem like you're having fun," he said. "Just a little overwhelmed," I replied, my voice quiet. "It's been a long week," he chuckled, leaning back. "Then relax. You're safe here." Safe. The word made my stomach turn. I looked around the restaurant, noticing every detail. The families laughing at the corner table, the couple sharing dessert by the window, the low golden light reflecting off the wine glasses. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful. While I was sitting here pretending not to know that the man across from me might be trying to drug me, I took a small breath and stood. "Excuse me for a second," I said lightly, grabbing my purse. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Where are you going?" "Just to the restroom," I said with a practiced smile. "Be right back." He hesitated for a moment, then smiled again. "Sure. Don't get lost." My heart was pounding as I walked away from the table. Every step felt heavy, every sound too loud. I didn't look back, afraid he'd see the panic in my eyes. When I reached the hallway, I glanced over my shoulder. He was still sitting there, smiling and scrolling on his phone, completely unaware that his plan was falling apart. At the end of the hallway, a door marked "Employees Only" stood slightly open. My pulse raced faster. I pushed it open and slipped inside. Behind the door was a narrow service hallway with stainless steel shelves and the faint smell of food and cleaning supplies. Noah was waiting there, standing near the back door, his phone in one hand. He looked at me and whispered, "Come with me. Don't talk." I nodded, unable to find my voice. My entire body was shaking now. We moved quickly through the hallway toward the back exit. As we passed the kitchen, I heard the faint crackle of Noah's radio. "Police are 2 minutes out," a voice said. Police. The word gave me a sudden rush of relief and fear all at once. When we reached the back door, Noah turned to me. "Stay here. Don't go outside yet. He's still at the table. I've got the manager watching him. The cops are on their way." I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. My mind replayed every moment of the date. The charm, the compliments, the drink he ordered without asking, the way he'd pushed it toward me again and again. It all made sense now. Noah glanced through the small window on the door, watching the front of the restaurant. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "Just stay right here until they get him." I nodded, finally feeling the weight of what almost happened. My knees trembled, and I leaned against the wall. The fear that had built up inside me slowly turned into shock. I realized that one small decision, listening to a stranger's warning, had saved my life. The last sound I remember before everything went quiet again was the distant wail of sirens getting closer. I stood in that narrow service hallway, my heart thudding so loud I was sure Noah could hear it. The metal shelves around me gleamed under the bright fluorescent light, and the air smelled faintly of cleaning spray and cooked garlic. I clutched my purse to my chest, trying to catch my breath. Noah stood by the back door, his phone still in his hand, eyes darting toward the kitchen entrance every few seconds. "Listen carefully," he said in a low, steady voice. "We called the police. They're about 5 minutes away. Don't make any noise. Don't move until I say so." My throat felt dry, and I could barely speak, but I managed to whisper, "Are you sure he did something to my drink?" Noah nodded grimly. "I saw him take something out of his pocket when you went to the restroom. He poured it into your glass while pretending to stir his drink. I didn't want to panic you out there, but I couldn't let you take a sip." I felt the blood drain from my face. My stomach twisted, and a cold wave washed over me as the full reality hit. "I could have—" He cut me off softly. "You didn't. You're here, and you're safe. Just breathe." I tried, but every breath felt shaky and shallow. My mind was racing. The image of Ethan sitting calmly at that table, pretending to be kind and charming, made my skin crawl. I thought about the text I'd sent my sister and wondered if she had seen it yet. Then I thought about the other women. Had he done this before? Was I just the next one on his list? Noah stepped closer to the door window and peeked out. "He's still sitting there. Looks like he's waiting for you to come back. What if he comes looking for me?" I whispered, panic rising again. "He won't," Noah said firmly. "My manager is watching him from the bar. If he tries to move, we'll stop him." I wanted to trust that, but fear had its own voice, and it kept whispering worst-case scenarios. I pictured Ethan realizing I was gone, standing up, storming through the restaurant and finding the back hallway. My pulse quickened again. Noah must have noticed because he said, "Hey, look at me." His tone was calm but commanding. "You did the right thing by trusting me. You're not alone now." I nodded, biting back tears. "Thank you," I whispered. He gave a small, reassuring smile. "Just stay here a little longer. The cops are almost here." We stood in silence for what felt like forever. Every second stretched longer than the last. I could hear muffled voices and the distant clatter of plates from the kitchen. Then, faintly, the sound of sirens grew louder from the street outside. Noah exhaled. "That's them." He spoke quickly into his phone. "They're here. Back door." A voice on the other end responded, too soft for me to hear. Noah turned to me. "They're coming through the front first. They'll take him quietly. So don't worry. You're not going back out there. I nodded again, gripping the strap of my purse like a lifeline. My whole body was trembling now. I kept imagining what might have happened if Noah hadn't noticed. The thought made me sick. Minutes later, Noah peeked out the small window again. His expression changed. His shoulders eased, and he looked back at me. They've got him. I blinked in disbelief. Already? Yeah, he said softly. They walked up to his table. He looked confused at first, but then he tried to argue. One of the officers showed him something, probably the vial they found. He's in cuffs now. The words hit me like a wave of relief and shock at the same time. My knees gave out, and I leaned against the wall, covering my face with both hands. The tears came without warning, hot, uncontrollable, and full of everything I had been holding in since reading that note. Noah didn't say anything. He just stood close enough that I knew I wasn't alone. After a minute, he spoke quietly. You're safe now. They'll want to talk to you, but you don't have to face him. They'll take him out through the front. I wiped my eyes and nodded. My voice trembled when I said, I can't believe this happened. He seemed so normal. Noah sighed. That's what makes it scary. People like that know how to act normal. But I've been a waiter for years. I notice things. The way he kept watching your glass. The way his smile dropped when you didn't drink. It wasn't right. I looked at him with gratitude I couldn't put into words. You saved my life, I said softly. He shook his head. I just paid attention. You saved yourself by trusting me. A few minutes later, 2 officers entered through the back door. One was a woman in uniform, her expression kind but serious. Lena Marlowe? She asked gently. I nodded. You're safe now. We have him in custody. We'd like to get a quick statement, and then we'll take you home. Hearing those words felt unreal. The fear was still sitting heavy in my chest. But now there was something else. A slow, deep sense of relief. I followed them out into the cool night air, my legs unsteady but moving. The flashing blue and red lights from the police cars reflected off the restaurant windows, and for the first time that night, I could breathe again. I turned back to Noah before I got into the police car. Thank you, I said again, my voice breaking. Really, thank you. He gave a small nod, his expression soft but firm. Take care of yourself, Lena. You did everything right. As the car pulled away, I looked back one last time. Through the restaurant window, I saw Ethan sitting handcuffed, his charming smile gone. The man I thought was kind had turned into a stranger, a predator hiding behind politeness. I turned away and closed my eyes. For the first time that night, I finally felt safe. The ride to the police station felt like a blur. The streetlights flickered across the car windows as I sat in the back seat, gripping my purse like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. My mind was replaying every second of the night. The way Ethan smiled, how he pushed the drink toward me, the waiter's warning. I couldn't stop thinking about how close I had come to trusting him completely. If Noah hadn't seen what he did, my life could have ended in that restaurant, quietly and without anyone knowing what happened. When we arrived, an officer opened my door and offered a hand to help me out. The air outside was cool and smelled faintly of rain. The female officer from earlier, Officer Dana Reynolds, led me into a small interview room. She spoke gently, like someone who had done this too many times before. You're safe now, Lena, she said. We just need to go over a few things while everything's still fresh in your mind. I nodded, still shaky but trying to stay composed. She poured me a cup of water and handed it over. Take your time, she said softly. We can go slow. The clock on the wall ticked steadily as I told her everything, from how I met Ethan online, to the dinner, to the note Noah slipped me. My voice trembled, but I didn't stop. Every detail felt heavy, like I was finally unpacking something I hadn't realized was buried so deep. Officer Reynolds took notes, nodding as I spoke. You did exactly the right thing, she said when I finished. You listened to your instincts and trusted the warning. That's what saved you. I took a shaky breath. Was there really something in my drink? I asked, dreading the answer. She glanced toward the window, then back at me. Yes, she said quietly. The labs already confirmed it. It was a sedative, strong enough to knock someone out in minutes. You wouldn't have made it out of that restaurant conscious. The room seemed to spin for a moment. I pressed my hands to the table, grounding myself. "Oh my God," I whispered. "He was really going to—" She stopped me gently. "We think he's done this before," she said. "He's on record with 2 other complaints from women who met him through the same app. Both cases were dismissed for lack of evidence. But this time, thanks to you and the waiter, we caught him in the act." The weight of her words hit me hard. My heart broke for those other women, but a small part of me felt relief that he wouldn't hurt anyone else. "Can I see him?" I asked suddenly. I wasn't sure why I wanted to. Maybe I needed to see the truth with my own eyes, to understand that the person I thought was kind and charming had never been real. Officer Reynolds hesitated, but finally nodded. "You can, but I'll be there with you." She led me down a quiet hallway lined with glass observation rooms. When we stopped, I looked through the one-way glass. Ethan sat in a small room, handcuffed to a metal table. His once perfect hair was messy, his shirt slightly wrinkled. He looked annoyed more than anything, like this was an inconvenience, not a crime. He leaned back in the chair, smirking at the officer who sat across from him. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but his body language told me everything. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't scared. He was confident that he'd get away with it again. That realization made something inside me shift. The fear that had gripped me all night started to turn into anger, not just at him, but at how easily someone like him could hide behind charm and confidence. I looked at him for a long time, memorizing that face, so I'd never mistake a smile like his for kindness again. "He's going to be charged, right?" I asked quietly. Officer Reynolds nodded. "Yes, possession of a controlled substance, intent to harm, and attempted assault. The evidence is solid this time. He's not walking away." I felt tears sting my eyes, but this time they weren't from fear. They were from relief. A few hours later, after I gave my full statement and signed the necessary papers, Officer Reynolds offered to have someone drive me home. I hesitated. "Can we stop by the restaurant first?" She looked at me curiously, but agreed. When we arrived, the restaurant was quiet, the chairs stacked on tables, the lights dimmed. Noah was outside, locking up. When he saw me step out of the car, his expression softened with concern. "Hey," he said, walking up. "You okay?" I smiled faintly, though my voice cracked. "I think so. They told me everything. You really saved me, Noah." He shook his head. "You saved yourself by trusting your gut. I just happened to be there." We stood there for a moment in the cool night air, the streetlights casting a soft glow around us. "I don't know how to thank you," I said quietly. He smiled a little. "Just promise you'll stay careful, and maybe tell your story. A lot of people ignore the signs." I nodded, realizing how right he was. When I finally got home that night, I sat on my couch and stared at the city lights outside my window. Everything felt different now. The world hadn't changed, but my perspective had. I kept thinking about how close I'd come to trusting someone who wanted to harm me, and how a stranger's courage had kept me alive. As I closed my eyes, I thought about what Officer Reynolds said. There were other women, others who hadn't been believed. I knew then that I couldn't stay silent. My fear had been replaced by something stronger, a determination to speak up, to make sure no one else ignored that uneasy feeling in their gut. The next morning, I deleted the dating app from my phone and wrote an email to the local news station. I didn't want fame or attention. I just wanted people to know how fast trust can turn dangerous, and how one act of awareness can change everything. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks, not because I forgot what happened, but because I finally knew the truth. Evil hides in plain sight sometimes, but so does kindness. And that's what saved me. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through my window. For a moment, I almost convinced myself that it had all been a nightmare. The night before felt distant, like something that happened to someone else. But then my phone buzzed with a message from Officer Reynolds. "Ethan is in custody. He's not getting out anytime soon." The relief that washed over me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. I sat there in silence for a long moment, letting it sink in that I was truly safe. But safety didn't feel simple anymore. I went into the kitchen to make coffee, and as I poured it, I caught my reflection in the window. My eyes looked different. Tired, older, but sharper. The kind of sharpness that comes from seeing the world a little more clearly. I wasn't the same woman who had walked into that restaurant the night before. That version of me believed people were who they said they were. She wanted to trust again, but this version of me had seen what hid behind a charming smile. My sister Brooke called not long after. I could hear the panic in her voice even before she spoke. "Lena, oh my God, I saw the news this morning. They said a waiter stopped an attack downtown. Was that you?" I took a deep breath. Yeah, it was. There was a long pause on the other end before she said quietly, "I don't even know what to say. I'm just so glad you're okay. You did everything right. You listened." That word stuck with me all day. Listened. Because that's what it came down to. Listening to my instincts, to the unease in my gut, and to a stranger brave enough to warn me. I realized how many times we, especially women, are taught to be polite instead of cautious. We're told not to overreact or make things awkward, but if I had brushed off that note or laughed it off, I might not be here. Later that afternoon, Officer Reynolds called again. She wanted to give me an update. Ethan had a record, a hidden one. He had changed his name 2 years earlier to avoid an ongoing investigation in another state. 2 women had filed police reports against him, but there wasn't enough proof. "You caught him in the act," she said. "You probably saved more people than you realize." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't just a victim who got lucky. I was part of stopping something much worse. For the first time since it happened, I didn't feel powerless. That night, I met Noah at the restaurant. It was quieter than usual. The lights dimmed, and the air still carried the faint scent of roasted herbs. He greeted me with a warm smile, though I could tell he was still shaken too. "Hey," he said, "you holding up okay?" "I'm getting there," I said honestly. "I wanted to thank you again. I don't think I've really had a chance to say it properly." He shook his head, embarrassed. "You don't have to. Anyone would have done the same." "No," I said softly. "Not everyone would have noticed. Not everyone would have cared enough to risk saying something." He smiled then, that small, humble kind of smile that tells you a person's heart is genuine. "Well," he said, "I'm just glad you trusted me." We sat for a while, talking about what happened and how quickly life can turn in a single moment. He told me the manager had added a new policy to their staff training, recognizing warning signs in customer behavior. That small change gave me hope. Out of something dark, something good had begun. After leaving the restaurant, I decided to take a walk through the city. The sky was soft with evening light, and people were out laughing, walking dogs, living their lives without realizing how fragile safety really is. Every sound, the cars, the chatter, the music from a nearby cafe, felt amplified. I was alive to hear it all. That night when I got home, I opened my laptop and began to write. Not just for me, but for anyone who's ever second-guessed their instincts or ignored a red flag because they didn't want to seem rude. I wrote about trust, fear, and how quickly they can collide. I wrote about the importance of awareness, how one person paying attention can make all the difference. Over the next few weeks, the story spread online. People shared it across social media, tagging friends and saying things like, "Always trust your gut," and "Heroes come in all forms." Noah's bravery was recognized publicly, and the restaurant honored him for his actions. I sent him a message when I saw the article. He replied simply, "Glad you're safe. That's all that matters." But the story didn't just change him, it changed me. I started volunteering at a local women's safety organization, speaking to groups about awareness and trust. I wanted other women to know that fear isn't weakness, it's instinct, it's survival. Every time I spoke, I thought about that note, those 5 words written in a shaky pen that changed my life forever. Months later, I still can't walk into a restaurant without scanning the room, noticing exits, and checking my drink. But I don't see that as paranoia anymore. I see it as power. It's awareness that could save me again one day, or someone else. Looking back, I realized that night didn't just expose danger. It revealed something deeper, how good still exists in unexpected places. A waiter saw something wrong and decided to act. He didn't wait for someone else to notice. He didn't second guess himself. And because of that, I'm still here. The truth is, the world will always have people like Ethan, charming, manipulative, and dangerous. But it will also have people like Noah, quiet protectors who remind us that good doesn't need attention, only action. I'll never forget that night or the lesson it taught me. Always listen to your instincts. Always pay attention to the small signs, and never be afraid to trust the person who's trying to help, even if they're a stranger. If you believe in trusting your instincts and want to hear more real stories like this one, subscribe to my channel and comment where you're watching from. And remember, awareness saves lives.